The little girl stood in front of the bakery window with tears trembling in her eyes as rain-washed sunlight reflected off the glass. In her tiny hands was a crumpled $5 bill, folded so many times that its corners had nearly torn apart. Behind the display window sat rows of beautiful birthday cakes covered in bright frosting, strawberries, chocolate curls, and colorful decorations. But the cheapest one cost 3 times more than what she had. She swallowed hard and looked down at the worn bill again, as if somehow the number might change. Before we begin this emotional story, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Lifeline Corner if you believe kindness can change lives and that everyone deserves a second chance. Your support helps bring more heartwarming stories like this to people around the world. 12-year-old Marisol had been saving for weeks. Every coin she found under couch cushions, every bottle she collected for recycling, every small errand she ran for neighbors had gone into an old cookie tin hidden beneath her bed. Her mother, Celeste, worked long hours cleaning offices and apartment buildings. Life had never been easy for them. They lived in a tiny apartment above a noisy laundromat, where the walls were thin and the winters felt colder than they should. Yet despite everything, Celeste always found a way to smile. Tomorrow was Celeste's birthday. For years, her mother had sacrificed everything. She skipped meals so Marisol could eat. She wore the same worn shoes for 3 years because buying new ones meant less money for school supplies. She worked double shifts whenever rent was due. To Marisol, her mother was the strongest person in the world. This year, for the first time, Marisol wanted to surprise her with a birthday cake, not a homemade cake made from discount ingredients. Not a cupcake. A real bakery cake. Unfortunately, reality did not care about dreams. The bakery owner had kindly explained that even the smallest cake cost $15. Marisol nodded politely and tried to hide her disappointment. She thanked him and stepped aside, staring helplessly at the colorful display. $5 felt like a fortune when she was saving it, but now it felt painfully small. At that exact moment, the bell above the bakery door chimed. A tall man in a dark suit walked inside. His name was Everett Sloan. Most people in the city knew his name. He was the CEO of one of the largest technology companies in the region. His face appeared in magazines and business articles. People called him successful, brilliant, and powerful. What they didn't know was that Everett Sloan was lonely. 3 years earlier, he had lost his wife to an illness that arrived suddenly and left a silence that never seemed to fade. Since then, he had buried himself in work. Meetings replaced conversations. Contracts replaced friendships. His luxurious penthouse overlooked the city, yet every night it felt emptier than the tiny apartment where Marisol lived. That afternoon, Everett had wandered into the bakery without any particular reason. His company had just completed another major acquisition. Everyone expected him to celebrate. Instead, he felt numb. As he waited to place an order, he noticed the little girl standing near the display case. Her shoulders looked heavy in a way no child's shoulders should. He overheard enough to understand. $5. Birthday cake, mother. The word settled heavily in his chest. Marisol quietly turned toward the door, preparing to leave. She had done her best. Maybe she could buy a single cupcake instead. Maybe her mother would understand. Before she could take another step, the bakery owner called her back. There was confusion on her face. The owner smiled gently and pointed toward a beautiful vanilla cake decorated with fresh flowers made of frosting. Marisol stared. The owner explained that someone had already paid for it. Her eyes widened. She turned and saw Everett standing several feet away. For a moment, neither spoke. Then tears filled her eyes, not because of the cake, because someone had noticed, someone had cared. That evening, Marisol carried the cake home as carefully as if she were transporting treasure. Every few steps she looked down to make sure it was still there. When Celeste returned from work the next day, exhausted and expecting nothing special, she opened the apartment door and froze. The small table was decorated with handmade paper flowers. A birthday card colored with crayons, and a beautiful bakery cake. The look on her face was something Marisol would remember forever. The surprise brought tears to Celeste's eyes before she even touched the cake. Mother and daughter spent that evening laughing, eating cake, and forgetting their struggles for a few precious hours. what neither of them knew was that their story was only beginning. The next morning, Everett found himself unable to stop thinking about the little girl. He had spent thousands of dollars on luxury dinners that brought him no happiness, yet the memory of her smile lingered longer than any business victory. Curious, he returned to the neighborhood a week later. He saw Marisol helping an elderly neighbor carry groceries up a staircase. Another day he saw her reading books outside the public library because she loved learning. He noticed how she always put others first. The more he observed, the more he was reminded of the values he had forgotten. One afternoon, fate intervened again. As a heavy box slipped from a delivery cart, Everett instinctively rushed forward to help. At the same moment, Marisol ran from the opposite direction to assist. Recognizing each other immediately, both smiled. This time they talked. Marisol spoke proudly about her mother. She shared dreams of becoming an architect one day. She described how her mother worked tirelessly to provide opportunities. Everett listened, really listened, something he hadn't done in years. As weeks passed, an unexpected friendship formed. He occasionally visited the neighborhood community center where Marisol spent her afternoons studying. He donated books anonymously. He funded repairs without seeking recognition. Slowly, the neighborhood improved. The local library received new computers, the community center gained educational programs, scholarships became available. No one knew where the support was coming from. Everett preferred it that way, but life soon delivered another challenge. One evening, Celeste collapsed during work. Years of exhaustion and untreated health issues had finally caught up with her. The medical bills were overwhelming. Marisol sat beside her mother's hospital bed, terrified. The doctors explained the treatments required. The numbers sounded impossible. For the first time since buying the birthday cake, Marisol felt truly helpless. When Everett learned what had happened, he acted immediately, not as a CEO, not as a wealthy businessman. As a human being. He ensured Celeste received the medical care she needed. He arranged specialists. He covered expenses quietly through charitable channels so the family would never feel indebted. Most importantly, he visited, not with gifts, not with grand gestures, with presence. During those difficult weeks, Celeste learned about the stranger who had changed her daughter's life, and she finally understood something important. Everett wasn't helping because he was rich. He was helping because he was hurting. The loneliness he carried was just as real as the financial struggles they faced. 3 different lives. 3 different kinds of pain, connected by one act of kindness. Months later, Celeste recovered. Marisol returned to school with renewed determination. Everett began spending less time hiding behind office walls and more time engaging with people. His employees noticed the difference. His company culture improved, community projects expanded, scholarship programs multiplied. The lonely CEO who once believed success was measured in profits discovered a far more valuable truth: lives mattered more than numbers. Years passed. Marisol excelled academically. She earned top grades and eventually received a scholarship to study architecture. On graduation day, hundreds gathered to celebrate. Among them sat Celeste and Everett. Both watched proudly as Marisol crossed the stage. The little girl who once stood in a bakery holding $5 had become a young woman ready to build a brighter future. When she delivered her graduation speech, she spoke about kindness. She shared how one small act from a stranger had changed everything, not because of the money, but because someone chose to care. The audience wiped away tears. Everett lowered his head, overcome with emotion. For years he believed he had rescued a struggling child. Standing there, he realized the opposite was also true. Marisol had rescued him. She had reminded him that human connection could heal wounds that success never could. Before we reach the end, please leave a comment with the words, "Kindness changes lives," if you believe one small act of compassion can create a ripple effect that lasts forever. Years later, Marisol fulfilled her dream and became an architect known for designing affordable housing projects for struggling families. Every building she created carried the same mission, giving people hope. At the entrance of her first completed housing community stood a small plaque that read, "Dedicated to every person who chooses kindness when they have no reason to. You may never know how many lives you change." At the grand opening ceremony, Everett stood beside Celeste and watched families move into safe homes. Children laughed in playgrounds, parents smiled with relief, dreams took shape in concrete and steel, and all of it could be traced back to a little girl holding a crumpled $5 bill in front of a bakery window on a sunny afternoon. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Lifeline Corner. Your engagement helps spread messages of hope, kindness, and compassion to people who may need them most today. As the sun set behind the new housing community, Marisol looked toward the horizon and thought about that birthday cake. She realized it had never been about frosting, candles, or decorations. It had been about love. A daughter trying to thank her mother. A lonely man rediscovering his humanity. 3 lives meeting at exactly the right moment, and sometimes, that's how miracles happen, not through grand events, not through luck, but through ordinary people choosing kindness when the world least expects it, and that choice can change everything.